Yo, what's up, friendos? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be showing the part 2 of how to build your background like a pro vivarium, and we're going to be focusing on planting the tank and getting it ready for frogs. So kick back, relax, kick your feet up, and enjoy the video. I'll start where we left off last time in part 1 of this video. You can see the background is complete. The wood and everything is in place, the drainage layer is done, and now pretty much all we need to do is plant the tank and get it ready for frogs. Alright guys, here you can see the initial planting has begun. I've just laid some Markgravia on top of sphagnum moss to keep the roots wet so they don't dry out. You always want to do that. Don't lay it straight on the wood or straight on the dry lock. They can dry out rather quickly and it will not survive. I've also laid some Java moss on top of the wood, mounted a couple orchids, you can see there, and some more Java moss all along the wood. That is Peperomia marginella. There's some more Markgravia. I just set it right on top of the moss. And here's some more Markgravia. This is just Markgravia rectiflora. That little piece there is umbellata. Some more rectiflora. You can see here how I mount it on the hygralon. So it, to ensure that it climbs, I just use toothpicks and kind of stagger them to keep it upright. There's another orchid and some more Markgravia. There's also some Peperomia marginella there. And we're off to a pretty good start, I would say. Just laying down moss. There's some Ricardia species, Java moss, and also low-growing tropical moss. As you guys can see here, whenever I just throw cuttings in a tank, I just lay some Java or lay some sphagnum down and just literally throw the plant down. You don't need to always anchor it. It's got a mind of its own, and it will just take off and starts doing its thing. So here I'm showing some more Peperomia marginella. This is one of my favorite plants, and it grows really well as long as it's initially started on some moss and doesn't have the chance to dry out. So here's some more of the Ricardia species that I seem to get a lot of questions on. Sorry everybody, I don't know the actual name. I got it from a guy who lives in Hawaii, and he just called it a Ricardia species, tropical Ricardia species. Here is some Markgravia umbellata, some rectiflora there. There's a little piece of Peperomia serpens to the right of that. You can see how I just stagger it up the wall. There's a piece of Centennici. Alright guys, these are the bromeliads that I'm planning on using in these two builds. Vresia hieroglyphica and Vresia fenestralis. I kept it pretty simple and just really wanted one species per tank or two, mix them here and there, and then I did also find a bunch of Neoregelia zoe at my local nursery. And here you can see my initial bromeliad layout. These always change for me. It starts out one way, but it never seems to end the same way it started. I do play around a lot with bromeliad layout, just like I do with the wood when you're actually designing the background. I move them certain spots here, certain spots there, just see what looks right and what has the best feel for my aesthetic. So this is the current layout on the initial planting, but as you'll see in the video, it does go through quite a few changes. I went with mainly hieroglyphica in this tank and a couple zoes and one fenestralis. It does not stay that way though, so I'll let you guys know that to stay tuned and see the final results. And here you can see this is the initial planting final, I guess, if that makes sense. It didn't stay this way. I made quite a few changes, but this is still December 21st, 2019. So yeah, as you can see here from the last clip, I added some microgrammas, some more Markgravias, a couple more orchids, In the orchids, I tried a new method of mounting them in this tank. I did the Gorilla Glue Super Glue Gel, and I found that it is 100 times easier than mounting it with fishing line or wire or paper clips. It's very, very simple, and the super glue dries inert, so it's nothing you need to worry about it harming your frogs or plants. It is completely fine. So I added that orchid there, this orchid here. Like I said, those are just super glued into place, and it's really secure. It's not going anywhere. And so far, as you'll see later in the video, I've had really good results. Added some more Peperomia marginella. So yeah, you can see here there's just a couple changes and stuff I added. This tank, I've talked about it before, has no substrate. That filter media, sponge mat, whatever you want to call it, that's directly on top of the bottom panel of the glass. Then I have just low-growing tropical moss, some Java moss. So I have that sitting directly on top of that filter media. I don't even know what to call it, but and then as time went on, I wanted to let the moss get established and start growing, and then it was always in the future plans to add a bunch of leaf litter. For this tank is going to be for large obligates, so they do tend to appreciate lots of leaf litter. So yeah, that was definitely part of the initial plans, and you'll see in a few minutes here how it looks. But I think you guys get the idea of how this tank was initially planted, so let's move on to the fun part of the video and see how it currently looks. I want to address something before you see the full tank shot. You could see that wire coming through the vent at the top. I hid the wire with super gluing moss onto it, and I have it buried under that foam, and then I actually put a little pump here. It's a very small pump. It's like 1.5 inches in height, and I have a little elbow going into it and 1/4 inch Mist King line that is going to be pushing the water through the pump and running all along this front side that I buried by slicing that foam, burying the line in, and you can see here the water exiting out that little tube there, just so I could have some sort of water circulation. I didn't want it getting stagnant or anything, so it pushes all along the front here and back into the pump on the right side of the tank. So I thought this was a clever little solution, and I thought I'd share that with you guys. So now onto the tank. Alright, and here we are from February 25th, 2020. The tank has been set up for just over 2 months, and so far I'm really pleased with the growth that I'm getting. You can see the moss is really growing well on the driftwood. The microgrammas are starting to spread. Markgravia is starting to climb the wall. Orchids are all still alive, some blooming. The dwarf African violet's really exploded in 2 spots. This is the dwarf African violet you can see right here. I laid down 1 leaf in the tank initially, and that's where it's at now. Peperomia serpens is doing very well. As you can see there, it's kind of climbing all over the ground area of the tank. This little orchid there, that's you'll see the bloom here in a minute. Just wanted to show you some of the moss growth on the wood. And this is quite possibly my little favorite star of the tank. It is the Peperomia marginella. I just think it's such a cool plant, and the leaves are so tiny, but I just think it looks really cool when it's cascading down off a piece of wood. It's kind of my favorite part about it. There's the bloom of that orchid that I was talking about. It's so tiny. It's ridiculously small. It's hard to even see unless you're really up close looking for it. And this is another orchid that is starting to grow another plant. Margravia all starting to send off runners. The Ricardia is growing well. Low-growing tropical moss is growing well. Everything is doing very, very good in the tank. And I couldn't help but throw in another clip of the Marginella. Just think it looks so cool. And I hope you guys think so as well. Here's the Peperomia serpens. That's the dwarf African violet there. I added a bunch of leaf litter and seed pods and a little feeding station. That's what the banana is. Here you can see the bioactive components of this vivarium are doing well. Bioactive. Got springtail, something I don't even know what it is. There was a little mite that you could see. And here are a bunch of isopods that I didn't put inside the tank, so they're either hitchhikers on some plants or seed pods. So I don't even know which isopods these are, but they're very, very tiny. Maybe a 1/16 of an inch. So there's tons of them. So whatever that drainage layer, substrate stuff I'm using is doing well for the microfauna. Oops, sorry. Bioactive components. Bioactive. There you can see how small the leaves on the Marginella are. That's an orchid that's doing okay. It's growing some new leaves. I did split it up into 3 smaller plants. It was 1 bigger plant. And this piece of wood here was completely covered in moss, but I just used it in a newer tank, so I took a bunch of moss off it and threw it in a different tank. Here's another orchid. And here is a OOPHAGA, Histrionica anchicaya, or some people call it OOPHAGA anchicayensis. Really large, bold, just gorgeous frogs. I like how this one kind of has a sad face on its back. And here's another clip of the moss on that piece of wood on the bottom here. Doing extremely well. That's sometimes it's hard to tell between the low growing and the Java moss in certain areas, because some areas of Java moss stays really short and doesn't get stringy, and in other spots it gets really tall and ugly in my opinion. But here's the overall look of the tank, and like I said earlier in the video, guys, in the 6 months this tank is going to look completely different. The walls will be completely full of Margravia, aroids, mosses, where now it's still sort of bare, but you can see that the Margravia is starting to climb. Alright, my froggos, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know down in the comments if you guys want to see an update video of this tank in, I don't know, 4 months or so. See where it's at, just so I can kind of keep a little series of this vivarium, you know, from start to finish with you guys. Show the changes that it goes through. I also wanted to know what you guys thought of the new camera lens that I'm using. It's a long-range macro lens, and it's pretty awesome for getting some super detailed shots of these frogs. And I think it's really cool. I wanted to know what you guys thought of it. How many of you guys noticed that it was a different camera than the previous one? I'm using both cameras actually, but I wanted to know if you guys noticed, you know, some of the clips that I was able to get like this that are just super detailed. So yeah, wanted to know what you guys thought of it and if I should continue using it. So, but yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. So until next time, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also follow me on Instagram at OOPHAGA HISTRIONICA. Goldberg out.